Shalom. Today we're going to talk about the book Medical Apartheid. This is by Harriet A. Washington. So if you haven't caught any of my book reviews, going to read a little bit of the back, read a little bit inside, let you guys know the table of contents and all of that. Price, my thoughts ultimately. So this is a book I've actually had for quite a bit of time. I will admit I haven't read through it fully. For me, it's not like reading a novel because it is a hard read, and I'll get more into that. And you'll see actually as I read some excerpts of it, why it can be taxing on your mental health and emotional health. So this is Medical Apartheid, the dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to the present. And you guys, you can see how big this book is. This book, on the back, it says it retails for $17.95 in the U.S. and $21.50 on Canada. I'll have a little blurb on the screen showing you how much it actually costs right now on Amazon. All right, so the back says, the first full history of Black America's shocking mistreatment as experimental subjects at the hands of the medical establishment. Shocking, sobering, and immensely consequential in its implications. Medical Apartheid is a comprehensive history of the abuse of medical experimentation on African Americans, who have, for centuries, served as unwilling and unwitting subjects. The product of years of prodigious research into the medical journals and experimental reports, long disturbed, Medical Apartheid reveals the hidden underbelly of scientific research and makes possible, for the first time, an understanding of the roots of the African American health deficit. So just reading that, you can kind of get a picture of what it's like reading the book. It's definitely lots of big words and everything like that. And my vocabulary is pretty good. I use some terminology that, maybe 7 or more letters, but it definitely, some of the words are hard to pronounce, and it may be hard to pronounce in the section that I chose. So let's go ahead and look at the table of contents. Actually, I want to point out that the author of this book, one, I do prefer for the books to be written by a Black author. She's the winner and National Book Critics Circle Award for Nonfiction. She won the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles 17th Annual National Literary Award. She has an honor book. It won honor book, the Black Caucus of American Library Association, and 2000 Gustavus Myers Outstanding Book Award winner. So she's really good at writing, and I do enjoy her writing style. Just lots of big words that may be harder for some people to decipher. So we have the introduction, the American Janus of Medicine and Race. And I'm not going to read the heading. I'm going to read the subtitles because those tell you a little bit more about what the chapters are about. So we have the medical exploitation on the plantation. We have the antebellum medical experimentation on slaves and freedmen. Then we have the popular display of Black bodies. We have Black bodies in the antebellum clinic. We have an anatomical dissection and display. We have the Civil War, emancipation, and fin de siècle, medical research, and what really happened at Tuskegee. And then there's a part 2. So we have the eugenic control of African American reproduction. We have radiation experiments on African Americans. We have research on research on Black prisoners. Then we have research targets young African Americans, which we're going to read a little excerpt out of. Then we have the rise of molecular bias, illness as crime, African American martyrs to surgical technology, American bioterrorism targets Blacks, medical research with Blacks today. And then she has appendix, acknowledgments, notes, bibliography, index. All right. So quite a bit. This book has, so we have about 500 pages, but that includes the index and acknowledgments and all of that. This is Harriet A. Washington. And it says, has been a fellow in ethics at the Harvard Medical School, a fellow at the Harvard School of Public Health, and senior research scholar at the National Center for Bioethics at Tuskegee University, journalist, editor, worked for USA Today. She's decorated. I mean, she's a veteran. Okay, let's go ahead and read a little bit now. I want to tell you just how much of the meat and potatoes, I would say, is this book, and it's over 400 pages of content. The acknowledgments start at page 404, and then the appendix and all of that is afterwards. So lots of information, and that just tells you how many experiments there were. It's hard even just thinking about some of the experiments and how I can't articulate it, in a short YouTube video. But let's go ahead and read a little bit of the Childrens Crusade, and then I'm going to talk about why it's important. All right, so she talked about, over a decade ago, Isaac became ensnared in such a research initiative tailored specifically for children of color. Between 1992 and 1997, New York State Psychiatric Institute, which is NYSPI, and Columbia University's Loewenstein Center for the Study and Prevention of Childhood Disruptive Behavioral Disorders, conducted several research studies that sought to establish a link between genetics and violence. They performed experiments upon at least 126 boys, most of whom were between the ages of 6 and 10, utilizing the drug fenfluramine. All right, so the population of boys who were given the drug was 44% Black, they say, and 56% Hispanic. But this is misleading. Hispanic is an ethnic category encompassing people of white, Black, and mixed race. And all the Hispanic boys lived in Washington Heights areas were Black Dominicans. So they were all Black, and this was by design. That's literally what she says. Even though I said it kind of like I was talking, that's what she said. The experimental protocol specifies that eligible participants must be African American or Hispanic, and specifically excludes whites from participation. I'm going to skip a little bit. Not only were there numerous white enclaves in Washington Heights, but some of the Black boys, including Isaac Johnson, were drawn from as far away as Brooklyn. They also said that some of them were suspected because they suspected they were also selected, some of them, because their brothers had been in contact with the probation system. So here we have, I'm just going to stop there, get the book so you can read more about it. But I want to stop there because when you're reading these books about the medical history on African Americans, I just did a review on African American slave medicine, and it talks about some of the different experimentation and surgeries that were done. And you see parallels between then and now. And that's why it's important to read these books, to learn your history, to know, where does this come from? Where does this mindset come from? Where does this treatment that I'm getting today stem from, right? And so you see in here, they want Black boys only to test the propensity or how likely they are to be violent. And they're given these 6 to 10-year-olds mostly drugs here, and they're testing them, and they're excluding others, because basically what they're trying to say is they think Black boys are more violent, but let's see if science can prove it. So we've seen that in history where they say, they were inferior, and they're going to find tests to find that out, or we're more likely to get sociological disorders, and that's so much of psychology comes from the experimentation on Black people, and you'll read about this. Even they thought Black women were promiscuous and all of that. And so Black women is what the studies on Black women, on the slaves, the enslaved Black women, here we get gynecology. And so you see these things continue happening. And what we also see is a real uptick in the cases of, ADD, ADHD for Black youth. And also we see they get medicated, Ritalin. I mean, we think about celebrities talking about it. 50 Cent has talked about it, how you get on these drugs and you become like zombies. And, even in immediate family, you see the same thing. And so if you wonder where that comes from, it comes from these thoughts that were thought since slavery times. And they're still playing out today. And it's not just happening just because. This is thoughts that have been carried on. Just even the same way that Blacks are given less pain medications because they think, well, we're addicts, But they say they thinking that we're addicts, but it's really because they think that we feel less pain. Where does that come from? That's from slavery, where they were operating on us without anesthesia. And they thought that they said that we could take the pain. We could tolerate the pain. All right, so I have books here. I've been reading about this for a long time. Like I said, I had this book for a long time, and these two books I've had for a long time, but it's hard for me to read that book. And you can see just even from the way that I'm talking, it's a little bit different. These things are, they're serious. They hurt. It's sad to hear about the way people were tortured. And that's what furthered the medical system that we have now. It talks about even in here in the very beginning, it talks about on the cover, they wanted to have a picture of a statue of Marion Sims, which is, I kind of alluded to, he's thought to be like, the person who headed the gynecology or made it today, the father. And then how they have statues even of him operating on Black women. And the way, it's his story, right? So the way they paint the portrait, with the happy smiling slaves, like they tried to do about George Washington that came out, they made a book and his slaves were smiling and so happy. That's the same way they tried to paint the picture of what really happened. So I took a section from there because I wanted to talk about these books. And so these books are older. The author, Joanza Kunjufo, he has a lot of different books. And so I purchased, this was before I even had children. And you can see I've always loved reading, and I would take notes and all of that. His books are great. You should read them. So he has one, Developing Positive Self-Images and Discipline in Black Children. All right. I also have Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. So I have number 3. So there's a 1 and 2. He also has a book about teaching Black children as well, like educating Black children. I believe I have it, but my children have been going through a lot of my books. He also has one that was for daughters, for Black girls, and self-esteem and all of that. I don't remember what that's called. I'm going to have links to different books and resources and everything down below. All right, I kind of went on a tangent there. But just from reading that, you can get a gist of some of the things that you're going to read in here. It talks about, the reproductive rights of forced sterilization. That was big. I remember doing, for Black History, I remember doing one on Fannie Lou Hamer. And so it brings up memories, some good, some bad. So it is a harder read. There was a story about another young Black boy, but he was a teenager, and he fell out of a tree or something like that. And so he asked, a doctor to help him. And, he knocked him out. He removed his testicle and did some kind of studies on it. And, the boy could read about it, or, it was written about it in a newspaper, what he did to the boy, which the boy didn't consent. He was a teenager. So he has to go the rest of his life like that. But it furthers your research, you don't have to ask permission. You can do whatever you want with the Black bodies. And so she really, sometimes when you get these books, they sugarcoat. She doesn't. She really paints a picture, and you can't do anything but really empathize and sympathize, even if you're not part of the African diaspora. So it's a very sobering, as I said, shocking. The levels to the torture get worse than you could even imagine. And so this book isn't going to be one that everybody can stomach, and you're going to have lots of emotions reading it. But that just shows how well of a writer she is, or how well written it is. And as thick as it is, you're going to learn a lot. She covers, and to have it all in one place, I really think it's important, especially for anyone, because I was surprised. I thought like a lot of moms and stuff would reach out to me, but a lot of people that are nurses, doulas or midwives, mostly nurses, are people that reach out all the time. So when you're advocating for this type of medicine, you really should know where it derives from. You really should know that. So definitely, I think this is a project, a part of history that should be taught, but it's not, and it should be talked about, but it's not. it's worth every penny. This book is underpriced if you ask me, but I'm so glad that she has it and she's given it at this price so that so many people can afford it. So I definitely would recommend this book. Other than, like I said, the big words, which can, be sometimes hard to pronounce. Like I just opened this up, utilitarianism. How many letters is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 letters, just big vocabulary. She's flaunting her Harvardness. And then the only other thing I would say is the text is so small. But then again, think about if the text was a little bit bigger, how much bigger this book would be. It's already, 500 plus pages. So imagine. But it's a sad history. But I think that it's important because when you're reading this, you'll be making so many different connections of other pieces of history and then things that are going on today. And so you have to understand the perspective of where the medical industry comes from and how it looks at you and how it views you. And then you'll be more understanding of the level of treatment that you can expect to get. And I hate to say it that way. And that's why, there's movements where it's Black doctors and there's several, and I did share this before, but I'll try to remember to put that in the description as well if you want to look up, Black physicians and all that. But this is why it's so important to go back to our roots. All right. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought down below. If you've read this book, please go ahead and leave your thoughts as well below. And I'll see you guys in the next one.